Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into 6 wide receivers that will win fantasy football leagues in 2023. But before we could go in depth into these 6 wide receivers, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure they do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into 6 wide receivers that will win fantasy leagues in 2023. We begin with my first league-winning wide receiver, and that is Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders. Current underdog ADP wide receiver 10 at pick 15. I think it is laughable that right now in a majority of fantasy football leagues that Davante Adams will not be a first-round fantasy football pick. Davante Adams, by a lot of metrics, might legitimately be the best wide receiver in the NFL, and in my opinion, without a doubt, is a top 5 wide receiver in terms of skill set in the National Football League. But the problem with Davante Adams and why so many people are scared of drafting him is the quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo is far from ideal. I get it. But Davante Adams last year was going 12 inches deep into defenses with Derek Carr, who was a watered-down version of Derek Carr, right? That was far from the normal version of Derek Carr, as well as with Jarrett Stidham. With Jarrett Stidham, this guy was putting his nuts on the forehead of the defense. And you really think, and people really think, that Jimmy Garoppolo is this humongous step down, that he is going to take this offense and plunge them off the end of the earth. Davante Adams, with Derek Carr, with Jarrett Stidham, was the wide receiver 3 in PPR and the wide receiver 6 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games for the Raiders last season. He had 180 targets, 10.6 per game, number 2 at wide receiver. 100 receptions, 5.9 per game, number 7. 1,516 receiving yards, 89.2 per game, number 3. And 14 total touchdowns, first at wide receiver. Doing all of this with the 69th, very nice, I like, highest target accuracy from a quarterback to a wide receiver. So again, to further reiterate, it's not like Derek Carr and Jarrett Stidham were slinging the most accurate passes towards Davante Adams. This guy has a crazy catchable radius. He could catch the ball if it was thrown a fucking state over to California. Davante Adams, again, is one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. He was 2nd in dominator rating and 5th in total route wins. He is still currently dealing with an injury, but all of the reports I have read is that the injury is nothing serious, that Davante Adams will miss no time entering the season. So I guess if you want to put a little asterisk next to Davante Adams' name, go ahead. But I think by the time a majority of you guys are doing your actual fantasy football drafts in late August or early September, we will have clear news that Davante Adams is going to be good to go for week number 1. The Raiders' defense isn't going to be good. They're going to be having to throw the ball a lot late in games, which gives even further upside to Davante Adams. This is a guy that could score 30-plus fantasy points in any given week. And again, it is laughable to me that this motherfucker is the wide receiver 10 off the board in fantasy football leagues right now. The wide receiver 10, and you can make an argument that he might be the best wide receiver in the NFL. Moving to number 2, we got Amari Cooper of the Cleveland Browns, underdog ADP wide receiver 17 at pick 33. It appears the more I talk about Amari Cooper, the more his ADP continues to rise all summer long. Now, obviously, I'm not shifting the ADPs of these players, but it seems like the common man, the more average fantasy football player, is starting to catch on to the Amari Cooper fever. And this fever is going to hit hard because I really believe strongly in Amari Cooper. With Jacoby Brissett and a version of Deshaun Watson that looked like Stevie Wonder trying to throw the football, Amari Cooper was the wide receiver 10 in PPR and the wide receiver 18 in PPR points per game last season. He played in all 17 games, finishing 16th in targets with 132, 7.8 per game. He had 78 receptions, 4.6 per game, number 18, 1,160 receiving yards, 68.2 per game, number 11, and 9 total touchdowns, 4th at wide receiver. The quarterback play last year was ultimately why Amari Cooper wasn't able to finish higher at the wide receiver position. Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, is going to be a hell of a lot better in 2023. I genuinely believe that there was a lot of rust that came into things last season. I think he shook the rust off, and I think he is going to look a lot better. Now, will Deshaun Watson go back to his former glory where he was legitimately an MVP candidate in the NFL, right? He was one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. I'm not sure about that. Right? It might be a little bit crazy based upon what we saw last season to just say that Deshaun Watson is going to be a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the NFL this season. But what I do expect is a bounce back as a top 12 quarterback. And I don't think for Amari Cooper to succeed and for Amari Cooper to absolutely smash at his ADP as the wide receiver 17, that Deshaun Watson has to be one of the best QBs in the NFL. If he's just a top 12, top 10 quarterback, then Amari Cooper is set up in a perfect situation. Last year, Amari Cooper had the 3rd most unrealized air yards at the wide receiver position. And why that is so important is because there were tons of situations where the ball just didn't go anywhere near Amari Cooper, and if Deshaun Watson plays better than Jacoby Brissett as well as the Deshaun Watson that we saw last season, Amari Cooper could be a guy that could get 1,500 receiving yards. He had a 39.3% dominator rating last season, 3rd at wide receiver. I really do believe that Deshaun Watson, as well as this whole Cleveland Browns offense, is going to bounce back in a big way in 2023. If you guys have watched my videos before, you would know that I'm a huge fan of my boy 9-inch Nicholas Chubb this season, and I am a huge fan of Amari Cooper as well. This is a guy that I am heavily targeting in the 4th round of fantasy football drafts as a guy that I think clearly has top 12 upside at the wide receiver position. Moving to league-winning wide receiver number 3, we have Keenan Allen of the LA Chargers, underdog ADP wide receiver 19 at pick 36.3. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Keenan Allen is injury prone. Keenan Allen gets hurt tying his cleats. Keenan Allen gets hurt taking a shower. He drops the soap and he fucking falls backwards and gets hurt. But if you actually look at Keenan Allen's career, this guy is far from an injury-prone player. Sure, he only played in 10 games in 2022, but prior to that, 2021, 16 games, 2020, 14 games, 2019, 16 games, 2018, 15 games, and 2017, 16 games. Early on in his career, I'm not too sure if he would break or beat the injury-prone allegations, because in 2016 and 2015, he played in a total of 9 games, 1 game in 2016, 8 games in 2015, and before that, 14 and 15 games. I get that Keenan Allen is no longer this young, spry wide receiver in the National Football League, but he still runs incredibly crispy routes, and he is still on one of the best offenses in the National Football League with a new offensive coordinator in Kellen Moore, who I believe is going to help this offense out a ton. Keenan Allen, like I said, he only played in 10 games last season, so he finished as the wide receiver 41 in PPR, but he was the wide receiver 12 in PPR points per game, and again, he's coming off the board right now as the wide receiver number 19. Now, I get the offense added Quentin Johnston in the NFL draft. They still have Mike Williams. But I believe very strongly that Keenan Allen is still the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Last year, he had 8.9 targets per game, 89 targets, 47th, 6.6 receptions per game, 33rd, 75.2 receiving yards per game, number 39, and he scored 4 total touchdowns, 37th. Again, when I brought up that this guy still runs those crispy routes, 2.18 target separation, 8th. 11th in terms of fantasy points per route run, 19th in terms of true catch rate, and 19th in terms of rating per target. Justin Herbert last year was playing the season banged up, and that was very evident in that Chiefs game that he got messed up, and it really felt like he just never recovered, like that Drake song, right? That he wasn't the same Justin Herbert that we were used to over the last couple of years of his NFL career as one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think given the fact that Justin Herbert is fully healthy right now and that Keenan Allen is in a situation to remain as the clear alpha, the clear clear #1 wide receiver in this offense. This is a recipe of sugar, spice, and everything nice like the Powerpuff Girls for Keenan Allen to finish as a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football. And I think where he's coming off of the board right now is pretty funny. Wide receiver 19 for one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Again, I think this is a great situation for him to be in, and he does have top 5 upside at the wide receiver position before moving into the 4th wide receiver, as well as the 5th and 6th league winners for this season. I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. If you're brand new to Underdog Fantasy, they are the best place to play fantasy football this summer. If you don't know what best ball is, Underdog is a best ball platform. It's the best part about fantasy football. It's the draft. You do your 18-round draft, and that's it. There's no waivers, there's no trades, and there's no in-season management. You don't have to edit your lineup because at the end of every single week, Underdog automatically throws the highest scores into your lineup for you. So the most fun part about fantasy is the draft, and then you don't have to ever worry about starting the wrong running back, the wrong wide receiver, and losing your weeks. And they have the biggest fantasy football contest ever, the biggest tournament ever. $25 to enter Best Ball Mania 4, 150 max entries, $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. This is a great tournament, and again, has very large upside to win $3 million to first place. Now, if you don't want to play in big tournaments, they also have smaller tournaments they're going to be releasing with $3, $5, $7, $10 entry fees. And they also have sit and go games, which is basically like your regular fantasy football league. With as low of a buy-in as $3, you play up against 11 other people, 12-team leagues, and the first 2 places make money. So if this sounds fun to you, make sure you use promo code Notorious for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit $100, you get an additional $100. I will be doing a live stream next Sunday, just a week from today, a 10 to 12 hour draftathon. So I'm going to be ripping a bunch of drafts on there, and I hope that I can draft with all of you guys. Now, moving to the wide receiver number 4, that is a league winner. We got Wiki DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears, underdog ADP wide receiver 26 at pick 47. Now, Justin Fields absolutely carved up the Tennessee Titans defense in that preseason game a few days ago, or yesterday it was. Now, he didn't actually do that because I think he averaged like 3 air yards per throw. So he was just throwing it, and Khalil Herbert took it to the crib. DJ Moore took it to the crib. DJ Moore looked great on that play. Now, it really had nothing to do with the throw. I legitimately mean you could have thrown DJ Moore the ball, and he just made every defender do a fucking dance, right? He broke all of their ankles. It was hilarious to watch. But DJ Moore, I feel like that move itself, that play itself is going to move DJ Moore's ADP up, because it seems like a lot of people are cautious about DJ Moore because maybe DJ Moore has bent them over a table in the past, because DJ Moore has been a great wide receiver ever since he entered the NFL as a Carolina Panther. But the problem was the quarterbacks of the Carolina Panthers have been completely and utterly dog shit for DJ Moore's whole career. He had Cam Newton when it wasn't Super Cam, when it wasn't the Cam Newton hitting the fucking dab in the end zone, right? It wasn't that Cam Newton. It was watered down Cam. And then he has Mono Man Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, PJ Walker, and a myriad of other quarterbacks that aren't good. But now he goes to the Chicago Bears with Justin Fields. And again, I get it. Some people don't think Justin Fields is very good at throwing the football, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, if you compare Justin Fields to a majority of the quarterbacks that DJ Moore has played with in Carolina, it is legitimately night and day. It is polar opposite sides of the spectrum. Justin Fields is a significantly better passer than all of those guys. Not just most of them, than all of them. Justin Fields, coming out of college, was a guy that people talked about how he would dice up fucking defenses, right? But in the NFL, because he hasn't been throwing the ball as much, people start to panic. They think, oh, Nick, the Chicago Bears aren't going to throw the ball enough for DJ Moore to be successful. You better believe this is a team that throws the ball a lot more than a majority of people think they are going to. DJ Moore was a key addition to this offense. Their offensive line has gotten better, and I think DJ Moore is going to feast like a fat kid eating cake. Shout out to 50 Cent. Wide receiver, 24 in PPR last year, 33 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games, 118 targets, 6.9 per game. Very nice, I like. Number 21 at wide receiver, 63 receptions, 3.7 per game, number 37, 888 receiving yards, 52.2 per game, number 26, and 7 total touchdowns, 14th. Again, when you talk about how shit the quarterbacks were for the Carolina Panthers last season, that is further reiterated by the fact that DJ Moore had a 6.3 target accuracy. 6.3, 97th at wide receiver. That is so bad, abysmally bad, and yet DJ Moore had a 35.6% dominator rating, 5th at wide receiver. This man was like Michael Jordan in his prime in terms of domination, and people are still scared to draft him because of that running back Justin Fields, right? People are so nervous to draft DJ Moore. Watch the fucking clip of him catching a 3-yard throw and taking it to the crib. DJ Moore is an upper echelon wide receiver in the NFL. DJ Moore's a guy that might be a top 15, 14 fantasy football wide receiver draft pick come 2024 fantasy football draft. Buy in early. Get in before everyone's all over DJ Moore. Again, I think his ADP is going to continue to rise because if he plays in more preseason games and does anything like what he did in that preseason game yesterday, then people are going to blow their loads all over their screen and his price is going to rise quickly like your cock in the morning. Moving now to the 5th league winner, and I think this is going to be a decisive pick. We got Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, underdog ADP wide receiver 34 at pick 66.4. He was the wide receiver 17 in PPR last season, and the wide receiver 14 in PPR points per game, tied with Davante Smith. He played in 15 games last season, finishing with 128 targets, 8.5 per game, number 17, 77 receptions, 5.1 per game, number 21, 1,124 receiving yards, 74.9 per game, number 12, and 6 total touchdowns, 20th. I get that the quarterback situation in Tampa Bay reeks to high heaven. You can smell it straight through the fucking monitor, your TV, when you're watching the game. But Baker looked kind of good in preseason. Now, I'm not here to say that Baker Mayfield is back. Baker Mayfield is going to play like he played in college. But what I'm going to say is that maybe Baker Mayfield isn't as awful as people are willing to say. And even if Baker Mayfield sucks donkey cock at being an NFL quarterback, it would be hard for me to believe that Mike Evans really busts this fantasy football season, right? Wide receiver 34 off of the board. Mike Evans would have to legitimately put up the worst season of his NFL career for him to finish as the wide receiver 34. Tom Brady last year was not the same old Tom Brady, right? Not the same. It was nowhere near the Tom Brady that we were used to. 6.9 target accuracy for Mike Evans, 79th. So again, I don't expect Baker Mayfield to go out there and slice a defense up like O.J. Simpson, but what I do expect that Baker Mayfield goes out there and looks somewhat competent, and he is able to throw the ball to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. Since Mike Evans entered the NFL out of Texas A&M in 2014, this motherfucker every single year, consistent like clockwork, over 1,000 receiving yards. Every year. Again, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, with Jameis Winston, with Tom Brady. This guy can do it with a variety of levels of talent at the quarterback position. He was 26th in yards per target, 19th in yards per reception. I know that Mike Evans is a little bit touchdown dependent, but I think Mike Evans is going to surprise a lot of people this season. I think he has the upside to win you your league. Just last year, we were drafting Mike Evans as if he had top 10, top 5 upside at the wide receiver position. Again, I get why his ADP is falling. It's getting a little bit, it's fallen deeper down in drafts because of Baker Mayfield. I get it. But at some point, have we lost our mind? At some point, have we thought too hard about things? Have we galaxy brained ourselves out of an upper echelon NFL wide receiver. So I think that Mike Evans could be a league winner. And something to understand about league winners, Mike Evans doesn't need to be wide receiver 12 to win you your league because he's coming off the board at wide receiver 34. Davante Adams is going as a top 10 wide receiver. He has to finish very high to be a league winner, right? But Mike Evans isn't this potential first-round fantasy football draft selection. Mike Evans goes balls deep into the draft. So I'm excited about Mike Evans this year, and I think a lot of people are just forgetting how great of a wide receiver he is. Moving to my league-winning wide receiver number 6, Jahan Dotson of the Washington Left Hands Up. Who are we? The Commanders. Underdog ADP wide receiver 39 at pick 75.6. Jahan Dotson looked really good in his preseason game number 1, and Jahan Dotson is running on a bit of a hot streak. Dotson had some really big spike weeks during this season. He had 2 top 12 finishes last year in 2022, and he had 6 top 25 finishes. I get it. Again, the quarterback situation here isn't the most ideal, right? Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett. It seems like it's going to be Sam Howell, but in my opinion, either of those guys is a step up from limp dick Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. Last year, Dotson was the wide receiver 50.5 PPR and the wide receiver 38.5 PPR points per game. He didn't play the full season, 12 games played in 2022 with 10 starts, but it is very important to understand that Jahan Dotson was a first-round NFL draft pick just a year ago. Jahan Dotson is an upper echelon talent at the wide receiver position. And again, where he's coming off of the board at wide receiver 39, he doesn't need to be wide receiver 7 to be a league winner. He just simply doesn't have to be. And I believe, based upon what we saw last season with not so hot quarterback play, that Jahan Dotson has the upside to any given week really have that huge game that puts you over the top in fantasy football. Something that isn't talked about enough is that a lot of fantasy football games are going to be blowouts. You versus your opponent, a lot of the time it doesn't come down to a 1 or 2 point performance, right? Your kicker scores 4 points, his kicker scores 6 points, and that's why you lost, right? That's not what happens a lot of the time. A lot of the time, someone is getting their fucking teeth kicked in, and the other team is obviously very happy. They dominated, they put up a huge performance, and the other team kind of just has a not so hot performance, right? Most of the time you play in fantasy football, there is an ass kicking. It's normally never like a 3-point game. Normally it's 10 plus points is deciding who's the victor. So Jahan Dotson, while he may not be uber safe because obviously Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett aren't that amazing, I think in an Eric Bieniemy offense, as a guy that again has first round NFL draft capital, a guy that was 16th in yards per reception, 6th in fantasy points per target, and 19th in contested catch rate with 2 top 12 finishes, 6 top 25 finishes in his rookie season where he only really started 10 games. This guy looked incredible. This is a wide receiver that I want to take shots on. Again, an Eric Bieniemy offensive coordinator offense. A wide receiver like Jahan Dotson. I know I like Terry McLaurin. I do. Because I think he's that uber safe pick where there's a lot of question marks at wide receiver. There's Jerry Jeudy in that range where Terry McLaurin goes. I think Jeudy is either going to smash or he's going to end up being a huge bust. Same thing with Drizzy Drake London, right? What if Desmond Ridder just sucks donkey cock, right? And this team is really bad, and they run a lot, and maybe Drake London busts, right? But Terry McLaurin is that safety net early on. I get that Jahan Dotson's a little bit more risky game in and game out, but I think given the fact that Terry is always going to face the number 1 corner, defenses aren't going to put their number 1 corner on Jahan Dotson. That gives him some even further added upside. I like this Commanders offense a ton this season. I think they're severely underrated for fantasy football, and I'm a huge fan of Jahan Dotson. So let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought about today's wide receivers that I talked about. I know some people question Mike Evans, but outside of that, I think this is a very tame list. I don't think any of these wide receivers, besides Mike Evans that I said, people are really going to have a problem with. I know some people don't like Davante Adams, but there's definitely a easy way to see that Adams finishes as a league winner. Same thing with Cooper, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Jahan Dotson. People will question Mike Evans. I think people are really taking a sleep, taking a nice nap on the boys. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Again, please use promo code Notorious when you sign up on Underdog Fantasy for that first match. Deposit bonus of up to $100. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good